July 20th, 1944. Deep inside the Wolf's Lair military headquarters in East Prussia, a 2-pound block of plastic explosive shatters the heavy summer heat. Slipping out of the compound is Colonel Claus von Stauffenberg. He has just planted the bomb, and as he boards a military aircraft bound for Berlin, he operates with the absolute conviction that Adolf Hitler is dead. Inside the conference hut, the blast has shredded a massive oak table, blown out the windows, and left several officers dead in the rubble. In popular memory, this detonation kicks off a flawless moral crusade. We picture a unified band of democratic heroes launching Operation Valkyrie to strike down tyranny and save the world. The reality is that by midnight, the coup had entirely collapsed. The conspirators were being rounded up across Berlin, and Stauffenberg himself was facing a firing squad in the courtyard of military headquarters. Hitler's survival was only the beginning of the failure. The plot actually imploded because of deeply fractured internal agendas, a psychological grip that paralyzed the German military elite, and a catastrophic communications blunder. To understand why Operation Valkyrie fell apart, we have to look past the physical explosive and examine the invisible, systemic barriers that successfully protect a dictatorship from within. The resistance network behind the plot was incredibly fragile. The people working to overthrow the regime were not a unified pro-democracy monolith. For conservative military leaders like Stauffenberg, the primary motivation was pragmatism. After rapid victories early in the war, the German army was now staring down military annihilation on multiple fronts. They wanted to initiate a coup to salvage what was left of the country, and many remained indifferent to the horrors of the Holocaust. That military calculus stood in sharp contrast to civilian conspirators like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German pastor and theologian. Bonhoeffer argued that abstract pacifism was insufficient in the face of absolute evil. He believed that to stop the systemic slaughter by the Nazi state, a Christian had to willingly accept the profound moral guilt of committing murder. Because one faction was trying to win a favorable peace treaty, while the other was wrestling with the theology of assassination, the resistance lacked a cohesive political vision. They were philosophically divided before the fuse was even lit. Despite a looming military defeat, almost none of the highest-ranking German generals actively supported the coup. The reason comes down to a few lines of text. In 1934, the military changed its formal vow. Soldiers were no longer required to swear loyalty to the nation's constitution. Instead, they swear the Führer Oath, a pledge of unconditional obedience directly to Adolf Hitler as an individual. This oath functioned as a sophisticated institutional conditioning tool. For career officers, it seamlessly intertwined their absolute obedience to the dictator with their sense of personal honor. It acted as a psychological straitjacket. When high-ranking commanders were approached to join the resistance, many refused, not out of fear of execution, but because the abstract concepts of duty and honor had been entirely hijacked by the regime. When the bomb finally detonated on July 20th, a heavy oak table and wide-open summer windows dampened the lethal force of the blast. Adolf Hitler survived with only minor injuries. But the conspirators still had a chance to seize control of the government if they could isolate the headquarters. That responsibility fell to General Erich Fellgiebel, the chief of signals. For reasons that remain debated, he failed to sever the communication switchboard connecting the Wolf's Lair to the outside world. That single open line allowed Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, who was currently cornered by coup forces in Berlin, to maintain contact with the surviving high command. At that exact moment, a young officer named Major Otto Remmer arrived at Goebbels' office with orders from the conspirators to arrest him. Goebbels simply picked up the receiver and handed the phone to Remmer. On the other end of the line, Hitler asked the major a single decisive question: "Do you recognize my voice?" Major Remmer immediately snapped to attention. He accepted an on-the-spot promotion and turned his troops against the conspirators. When deep psychological conditioning meets a single open line of communication, an entire military revolt can collapse in seconds. The regime's counterattack was brutal. The surviving authorities launched a massive purge, hauling roughly 200 resistance fighters, including Dietrich Bonhoeffer, before show trials and executing them. While the plotters faced the gallows, unrepentant loyalists thrived. Remmer, the officer who took the phone call, commanded divisions for the rest of the war, and later spent his post-war years leading a neo-Nazi party in West Germany. For years after the war, many Germans still viewed the July 20th plotters as traitors. Over time, that memory was sanitized into the flawless democratic martyrs we see in Hollywood films. Today, Historians assess them with more nuance, fully acknowledging the authoritarian visions many of the military plotters actually held. The courtyard where Stauffenberg and his co-conspirators were shot is now a quiet memorial site. Their sacrifice reminds us that fighting absolute tyranny is rarely a clean or simple narrative. It requires individuals to accept severe moral compromises and to systematically shatter the very oaths and institutions they were conditioned to protect.